We got a pretty grim diagnosis that I had incurable terminal cancer, like a form of cancer. So then your life got pretty serious pretty quick, and we were sort of faced with a sort of a reality with the financial, I suppose, processes and constraints attached to it.
Welcome to Where's My Money? One man, $1 million of debt, one podcast to find a way out.
Welcome to another episode of Where's My Money? If you've been here since episode 1, I really appreciate you sticking around. We're learning, we're growing, and trying to give you a super entertaining and informative podcast. So if you've got stuff you want to hear in the pod or give us feedback on the guests we've had, we always welcome your feedback. So get in touch on the socials at Where's My Money NZ, or you can send an email, where'smymoney@rover.nz. Love to hear from you. Just a reminder, this segment does not constitute financial advice and does not take your individual circumstances and financial situation into account. We encourage you to seek assistance from a trusted financial advisor, strategist, or other professional advice. Insurance is something we've touched on a few times in its various forms. It's certainly an unsexy way to spend money, but it's a safety net you can pretty much count on not being able to live without as an adult, especially once we start owning assets, having dependents, and getting older and more prone to getting sick or having our ability to work and earn money taken away from us. In season 2, we met Willie from Enable Me, who broke down insurance in a very nice, succinct way.
So what's happening when we pay our premiums every month and we look at that payment and we begrudge it?
Yep.
What we're actually doing is we're paying into a big pool,
Yep.
big pool of funds. And at any given time, an individual will need to make a claim. Broadly speaking, this is what happens.
Yep.
The insurer will draw from that pool of funds and then they'll pay that person their claim.
Yep.
So you can imagine if that pool gets emptied out too quickly, then you and I may potentially see our premiums go up next year.
And up they went. In the last couple of years, some insurance premiums have gone up anywhere from 10 to 30% in some cases due to, well, a whole bunch of stuff. Crazier weather, more claims, and the rising costs of, everything, it would seem. At the lighter end of the scale, I had to make a claim this week because our fence fell over in some shitty Auckland weather. Annoying, a little stressful, but it's probably going to save us a couple of $1,000, so I'm glad the cover was there. What about at the other end of the scale, though, when it's literally your life, your ability to look after your family that's on the line? Willie has seen it all too often, and the people that get ahead of it are really glad they did.
The one thing I can say is that when people come and they have to make a claim because they've lost a loved one, they've had a cancer or something horrible's happened, they don't regret it.
No.
And in fact, they would say, can I turn back the clock and get some more?
Yeah, it can be a daunting thought. Our mortality, the unpredictable nature of life, sickness, death, it's all pretty scary. But having insurance can give you some reassurance and let us sleep at night knowing we're covered in the event of bad, worse, or the worst happening to us. Alex Chiet is a hardworking, regular Kiwi guy. He's healthy, he's fit. Life was sweet. Until he got some of that news. The words you never want to hear a doctor tell you. All of a sudden, his priorities shifted, the game of life had dramatically changed, and he and his family had to make some big changes fast. Alex was kind enough to lend me some of his valuable time to share his story and let me dig into some of the nitty-gritty financial aspects of the hand that he had been dealt.
Thanks for the opportunity to sort of share. Hopefully it helps someone somewhere. But yeah, look, I suppose if I start with the diagnosis, it was March last year, 2024, where there are a few underlying health conditions, and then suddenly we got a pretty grim diagnosis that I had sort of incurable terminal cancer, like a form of cancer that's pretty rare and aggressive, called cholangiocarcinoma. And there was early opportunities to operate, but then we were sort of basically the medical advice here in New Zealand was, we can't operate. I think, I was in a 2% bracket of survival because the cancer had metastasized and it got out of my liver. So then your life got pretty serious pretty quick, and suddenly sort of everything that we knew was turned upside down, and we were sort of faced with a sort of a reality with the financial, I suppose, processes and constraints attached to it. So that's sort of where we were. So that was, so that was March last year. And then, I was given the option, I was probably given, 12 to 18 months as sort of a realistic time frame with how aggressive that cancer was. And, they've given me chemo, but it was just a matter of time. So our sort of focus turned to, is there another way? What else can we do differently? And then just fortunate that I married a Canadian and I'd lived in Canada, and through some pretty, fortuitous sort of stars aligning sort of opportunities, we managed to get access to, get into Canada and see one of the world leading experts in the form of cancer I had through, my wife's brother's connection. So pretty much we uprooted our lives and headed to Canada, Toronto in Canada. Yeah, but we were gone within, I think, a week of the diagnosis. We packed up our lives here and headed to Canada pretty damn quick.
So where did health insurance or life insurance come into this? Because it sounds like, you had to make your own plans. Was there any cover that you had from the get-go that was, there but not good enough, or was there nothing at all, or how did that all kind of come into it?
It's funny, I would probably even go back a step, when we came back, 20 years ago, came back from, your time overseas, the OE, my wife had a ring on her finger, and then suddenly you start thinking about, health insurance, life insurance, all this stuff that you never had.
Adult stuff.
But you didn't, it wasn't a priority. You don't have the resources. It seemed like a big chunk of money that, would be put to other things, and your money's stretched in those, all the time, but especially when you're young.
Yeah.
So when we got back and we were, engaged, starting to look at, next steps, we took out some life insurance and I think it was maybe life insurance, maybe a little bit of health. So we had that for about 6 years, but then we took off to Canada 6 years later, and I chucked it in. I was like, there's no point keeping this stuff. We're going to another country, and even though the insurance provider at the time said, no, look, you should hold on to this because the premiums get higher over time, I was just like, nah, we're leaving. There's no point paying for something that, we're in another country. So we had none while we were in Canada, but then when we came back, this time we had 3 kids in tow. We're shifting back to New Zealand. This is about 2000 and, get my years right, 14, 15.
Yeah.
Conversation with a friend. Hey, what are you doing about insurance? And I was like, I should probably think about that stuff again. And that led to a personal connect and a conversation that led to us at that point taking out some income protection and some life sort of cover as well for myself and my wife. So that's probably where I'd say it started, the whole sort of insurance side of things and thinking about that. When you're in a place in life too, at that point with 2 incomes, sure, it's always a question, and it probably took and my wife a little bit more to get her head around what was going out of your bank account to sort of protect your future a little bit, knowing that things may or may not happen. But that was sort of, when things kicked in for us around those decisions.
And what did this treatment look like? Like, what were your options? You obviously chose to go and find some treatment overseas. Why was that the best option? Was it just, did you not agree with the numbers you were given here? Was 2% not good enough? Or, did your insurance say we'll cover something overseas? How did that all kind of play out?
Yeah, well, I think the first priority for us, it was a pretty messy time, right? You're not really thinking clear. You're not sleeping as well as you'd like. And there's a lot of information coming at you at the same time, just from a cancer perspective, from a financial perspective, a lot of, good information, but it's just really hard to work through, and you probably don't quite have the headspace to process things as well as you usually do. I
can only imagine just being bombarded with all of that, and some of that is the last thing you want to be thinking about, but a lot of it's the first thing you have to be thinking about at that point, right?
Yeah, well, they're sort of connected, and I think the first priority for us was well, where's the best treatment? And if the best treatment's not going to be in New Zealand, where is it? And we explored Australia and Canada, and it started to line up, as I mentioned, because we could see Jennifer Knox, this world-leading expert on the type of cancer. Suddenly, that gave us hope, and Canada became the beacon. Like, let's get there. That's going to give us a chance, because I didn't have a chance here. It would have been, it was going, one way that we didn't really want to think about too much. So once we decided on Canada, then comes all the financial considerations attached to that. So that then kicks in a whole sort of chain of events. So, one is, getting there. Two is, living there, and the dollar is a lot weaker, and the New Zealand dollar is not as strong in Canada. And three, the treatment itself, because you got to pay for that. So, we crunched numbers, we worked out what we could and couldn't do, like you're going from 2 salaries. So we had income protection, so that's a good thing. So you go from 2 salaries to 75% of one. So it's still a big hit. Withdrew KiwiSaver. So fortunately I had KiwiSaver, and we took that out as well. Just not knowing what lay ahead of us and what we'd have to face. Some other things we probably did too. We had to rent out our house here just to offset expenses in Canada. And the other thing that is, to be honest, it's really still hard to process and fathom was the support we received from family and friends. So a friend set up a Give a Little page, and we got some overwhelming support from family, friends, people we don't even know, to support the treatment and our costs for getting to Canada. So that was sort of probably some of the factors from a financial perspective. So that helped us, be in a position that we're in now today, still here, not out of the woods, but back in New Zealand as well. So
it's so cool to hear some of the generosity of strangers. It's weird that Kiwis are so good at not talking about stuff, but when it comes to helping out someone you've never met or someone you know and you want to keep yourself confidential, we seem to be quite good at that.
Oh yeah, look, I still, it gives me goosebumps, and I sort of feel I'm not someone that likes to ask for help, and I sort of feel guilty, because I know not every person that faces the cancer diagnosis that we had, or financial burdens associated with it, receives that support or has that opportunity. So I'm quite mindful of that, and they're very fortunate and lucky. I suppose the other thing in that equation too that helped us was the brother-in-law, my wife's brother. We stayed with them for 11 months as a family. That wasn't the intent. The intent was to find somewhere ourselves. Like I've got 3 kids, and so we're a family of 5.
It's a travelling circus.
Yeah, they're a family of 6. So there was 11 of us there in their home, which was actually awesome from a cousins bonding perspective. But at the same time, it's, so you're sort of forever grateful for them, and they're sort of opening up their house and their lives for us, which also supported. Don't get me wrong, there's still bills to pay, and we were contributing and doing everything we could when you're staying with someone else. But if we weren't there, the financial challenges would have been even harder.
That's a interesting thing you mentioned. The fact that you could rent out your house here was probably really helpful at that time, but that doesn't negate the fact that you've probably still got bills to pay. I mean, did you have other financial burdens that you had to, did you have mortgage debt? Did you have other personal debt that you had to try and sort out before you left? Like, again, it's the last thing you want to think of, but it's still there, right?
Yeah, it's a few people said to me, they say, that if you can remove some of the financial stress, because it's something that comes into this, then that helps you sort of focus on the medical side of things and treatment and support. So I think that combination of, the amazing support we got from community, having income protection, taking out a KiwiSaver, and then being able to offset some of the costs through the generosity of the family over there really, really helped us. But you're remembering too that the dollar's a lot less. So, every time you're bringing money across, because that was the other thing I think you mentioned earlier, through an early conversation with Willie, who was our insurance provider, we understood that, yes, even though we're out of the country, we could still receive the income protection, which meant then that we're having to take that, that money across. Sure, there's a dollar difference, but at least there's resources that were helping keep us afloat in Canada.
Yep.
The intent was for my wife, Marsha, to work while we're over there too. She's a teacher and she's trained and has Canadian qualifications, but she snapped her Achilles playing pickleball 3 days before I started chemo. So suddenly we had to change that plan as well. So, yeah.
Oh, man. But talking about Willie with your insurance, that's a lot of people might have assumed that, if you're moving overseas, that a lot of the stuff you've paid for cover for doesn't apply. So it's a really good reminder to have an expert on your side who can actually find out all this information for you, so you don't have to go rifling through terms and conditions and policy documents. You got someone on your team who's there to help out.
Oh, I've got to be honest, Willie's not on, so I can say it, but once I just sort of sent him an email, hey, here's my diagnosis, this is what's happened. And suddenly he was back, he responded, I think within hours, definitely on the same day, to say, hey, let's jump on a Zoom call, on a Teams call, and have a chat. And that was gold for me at the time, because, as I said, I wasn't processing too much. I knew finance was a big thing to factor in, but I knew I had insurance, but I didn't really knew what it meant. As you said, all the T's and C's and what it meant. So Willie just walked us through it. Obviously connected with the emotions and what we're feeling, but also just slowly worked us through what we had and what that meant. And it felt, and went into bat for us. It felt like we had someone on our side, which was really nice at a time where you're not thinking clear and you're processing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, I guess there's a lot of hard realities that come to the fore in a situation like yours. What other things did you have to consider? I mean, someone's given you a 2% survival rate in New Zealand. You're looking at wills and all the potential flow-on effects of if this goes a certain way. Did you have to get that kind of stuff sorted as well?
Yeah, there's outside of probably some of the things we've talked about, there's just some really basic, just basic family admin stuff. So I don't know, every relationship's different, but you fall into roles at home, and as a husband you do certain things, as a wife you do certain things. So from our sort of financial side of things, I probably had a lot of the logins and knew about our insurances, knew about some of that information. My wife Marsh likes shopping online, but she also does probably the paying of bills and things. She wouldn't know where our money was. So unfortunately, given the reality, I'm just thinking about, if I'm not here, Marsh and the kids need to know where everything is and where we are. So I had to also go through a process of sort of
unpacking everything,
admin and financial stuff. So it was somewhere, and people and Marsh knew where everything was if the what we didn't want to think about could play out. So there was that piece. Wills was a funny one. It didn't come into our thinking, I think, because there's so much else going on, but also, well, Marsha's still there. I might not be, but she's still there. So and I was sort of just focused on trying to beat this thing. And so that was something, in a funny way, now we're thinking about wills. So now, having been through this and being where we are now, that's something we've started a conversation about, to put something in place. The other thing too, there's services offered in terms of counselling and support, for not just for me, for the kids, and for Marsh. So we're always, it's a lot, to process for all of us. So making sure those avenues were there. The kids were fine, funnily enough, or they're they just got on with the new reality over there. And Marsh thought it might be helpful just to talk to someone without, that doesn't know us, just to be able to articulate things and help her process her thoughts. So that was really helpful. But, even just at a family level, there's so much to, school years, where with kids pulling out of school here, putting them into school. Just to give you an example, our daughter Billy, she's 14. She started year 9 here in Wellington at a girls' school. She was not even a month into term 1. Suddenly we've taken off to Canada because their school year is different. She's gone back to year 8, done a term of year 8 in Canada. had 2 months summer holidays, which the kids were pretty happy about.
Yeah, stoked.
And then she started year 9 in Canada, did a term of year 9 in Canada. Then we've come back to New Zealand, and she's gone to a different school just to help the settling with more people she knew. And she started year 10. And so now she's in term 1 of year 10. So everything, like, to be honest, the diagnosis stripped everything away. Like, all that's important was family and friends. And we knew it was going to be messy in terms of school year and some of those things, but it didn't matter. It was just trying to do everything we could to be in the best position to fight this. So there, there's quite a lot in there. But yeah, there were other things going on as well, and all sorts, sort of, when we, having to set life up in Canada again, open bank accounts, get all that sort of. There's just a lot of admin in many ways. Just in another country as well.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing. I asked Alex, given what he knows now, what advice would he give to someone in their 30s who's feeling fit and healthy and maybe skipping out on the idea of health or life or trauma insurance to save a bit of cash?
It's tricky, everyone's financial situation is different, but what I could tell them is before diagnosis, and even when I was diagnosed, I always thought this was a nice to have, not a must have. And it was sort of, you'd look at money going out of your account and you know what that could do in other parts of your life. But I was healthy. Like, I've played sport my whole life. I've played, football here in New Zealand, overseas. I cycle to work. I swim in the harbour. I was fit and healthy. And even when I got the diagnosis, I was still doing all of that. I had no physical signs. I still felt fine. It was really bizarre. It was quite surreal getting this diagnosis. So I suppose my message to others is, you don't know what's around the corner. Like, you just don't know. And through having some cover here and making decisions that, hey, if you need this, it's there. Like, without the cover, we would be in a whole lot more stress, dealing with even more financial stress than we had with the diagnosis we got. And unfortunately, obviously I've had a bit of time as I've got treatment. I've done a bit of reading. You've got to control a lot of things that are in your control. So the more and more I read, the more challenging the future looks like, due to societal things that are happening in terms of diet and what we consume. And unfortunately, you're seeing more and more chronic sort of diseases creep into people earlier and earlier. So, I would be encouraging anyone to take out as much insurance as they can manage, or even sacrifice other things in their life to make sure they've got a bit of peace of mind, something there for the, what they don't want to happen, just in case it happens.
Yeah, like you say, control the controllables, but be prepared for the stuff you can't control as well, right?
Yeah, and there's ways of offsetting, and maybe you don't have to start out with complete coverage. You could just make a start somewhere with, that's the other thing that's quite overwhelming. There's, you got home, you got contents, you got health insurance, you got life insurance, you got income protection. There's a lot there, and a lot of people just go, oh, it's too hard. So I think just to start somewhere and get advice from someone to help you with that.
Yeah, that's where really good advice from Willie helped you out, right? You called him out and said he was A grade, golden standard, helpful for you, right?
Well, yeah, and I think it started with, the conversation I had with Dave before Willie around actually what insurance were available and making a decision. And then when what you never foresee happened, Willie's sort of response and empathy and care and support around that was awesome.
All right, so we know from Alex's perspective, insurance equals good. It meant the financial stuff was taken off his plate so he could focus on the bigger picture, making sure his family was protected and putting his energy into getting better. So how's that going now? Basically,
I had like 4 months of chemo in Canada, intravenous stuff, and it responded well, which meant I could get a liver resection, which they took out half my liver and cleaned out heaps of lymph nodes. So I've got like a permanent zipper now. And then I'm sort of getting towards the end of 6 months chemo following that. And in Canada, they said if I was responding well to the side effects, like I was handling them, and that my scans and things were looking okay, then they'd be happy to transition me back to New Zealand. But they didn't want to do that too soon because we'd come so far, and I've gone from not curable to the hope of cure. So now I'm back in New Zealand. I've got about a couple of months of chemo left, and then all going well, I go into a phase of 2-year phase of monitoring, sort of surveillance, 3 monthly bloods, and 3 monthly scans, and then after that it goes to 6 monthly for another couple of years. So I'm not out of the woods. There's a really high chance of reoccurrence, like 80% chance of reoccurrence of this cancer.
Yeah.
So I'm not spending any time thinking about that. I'm just living in the moment and making the most of today, and you worry about that if you need to worry about it. But I'm back working part-time and making a lot of adjustments to my own lifestyle to back to sort of what we discussed, to control what I can control. Yes, a lot of this is hereditary, but there are things you learn more about that are in your control. So I'm trying to do as many of them as I can to give myself the best chance, really.
And is that what keeps you going day to day mentally? Just, staying in the now, not focusing on the stuff you can't control?
Well, yeah, and I think probably part of my background, playing sport, working in sport admin and leadership, like I'm probably fortunate where I had some of the tools that I probably used on sports fields that I could apply to this diagnosis. So, staying in the moment, controlling what you can control, being sort of like, I found pretty early on, there's no point getting into the negative narratives. They're easy to get into, but that wasn't going to help. So staying optimistic and positive and, just doing everything I could. And I just tried not to let negative thoughts creep into how we're approaching things. And it's still where I am now, like in a funny way. I'm probably grateful I've gone through it. Like I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but the perspective and the sort of reflections you have, pretty much solidify what's important in life and what's not. We get a bit lost sometimes, I think.
It's very easy to, and it puts this into perspective too. I have sleepless nights about what's in my bank account, but talking to you has just given me a whole, a big reminder that it's not the be all and end all. And if we can take control of these things in a small way, it means we can focus on the stuff that really matters. Man, you're an inspirational guy. It's been really awesome to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, no, look, thanks for the opportunity. I think, as part of this process, capturing sort of what was happening in, my story, as people talk about, I found helpful, just for me, again, staying optimistic and positive. And then I've sort of gone, actually, if I want to help others, this might be a way of helping others, is sharing things, and, people will take what they want from it.
Catching up with Alex was a real eye-opener and gave me a supersized serving of some very important perspective, but also a reminder that good advice from someone that you can trust when you really need it when it comes to insurance, it's super key. They can unlock stuff for you when you're hit with the unexpected that you may not have been aware you were even eligible for. So it's worth reaching out and asking for help when it comes to buying, setting up, changing your cover, all that kind of stuff. That's a wrap for this ep of Where's My Money. If you've got a niggly finance question for us to put to Hannah or our other experts, fire us a message on Instagram at Where's My Money NZ. We'd love to hear from you as always. A huge thanks to Alex Chiet for taking the time to chat. I hope you took something from the story. I definitely got a good dose of perspective and a reminder to stay positive. In the next episode, Justin and Shelley are in to talk mortgages and how we can smash what is likely the biggest debt we'll ever have to bits.
It's harder than it probably ever was because, the size of the mortgages are harder. But, with a good plan in place, it's definitely still achievable. And one of the main pillars of things that we want to focus on is biggest bang for our buck. It's the highest cost, household budget. So it's got to be the thing you tackle off first.
Until then, keep watching what you spend. Use that free pizza coupon and consider that next side hustle. And I'll keep asking the question, where's my money?